No, no. The Lakeview room. The receptionist on the other end went quiet for a moment. Then she checked something on her computer. Certainly, sir, we can arrange that. I smiled. Perfect. I hung up the phone, and that was when I noticed Leo standing by the kitchen doorway. He was grinning at me, one eyebrow raised, my little partner in crime. I winked. Leo immediately burst out laughing. Don't forget, this is our little secret. This time, Leo nodded seriously. And right then, we heard Olivia's voice behind us. What secret? Leo and I froze at exactly the same moment. A few seconds passed, then Leo shrugged. Nothing. Olivia looked at both of us suspiciously. Then she smiled. All right, but the two of you have been acting a little strange lately. And she walked out of the kitchen. Leo looked at me. I looked at Leo. This is going to be harder than we thought. A few days later, our wedding anniversary was coming up. And this time, I was planning a surprise for Olivia. Let me tell you a story. Over the years, Olivia and I had celebrated many wedding anniversaries. Some were wonderful, some were pretty ordinary, and some nearly slipped by unnoticed because both of us were overwhelmed with work. I think most couples who stay married long enough have experienced that. Life sometimes gets ahead of you. Work, children, responsibilities, bills that need to be paid, and before you know it, special dates quietly come and go. But this year felt a little different. Maybe because we were getting older, maybe because Leo was growing up, or maybe because I had started realizing just how quickly the last few years had passed. I wasn't entirely sure why, but I knew one thing. This time, I wanted to get away with Olivia for a few days, just the two of us, by a lake, without phones, without to-do lists. And honestly, that decision didn't make me uncomfortable, because I wasn't going to have to touch my paycheck to pay for this trip. Years ago, things would have been different. I probably would have calculated every dollar I spent and reviewed the budget again when we got back home. But I didn't do that anymore because the system I had been trying to build for nearly 10 years had finally started producing results. I wasn't retired yet. I'd still be at school on Monday. But this time, the hotel bill wasn't coming out of my salary. And honestly, I liked that feeling because the system I had built years earlier was finally giving me a small gift in return. That evening at dinner, Olivia was sitting across from me, and Leo, as usual, was telling us stories about things that had happened at school that day. At one point, the conversation turned to the weekend. Do we have any plans this weekend? Olivia asked. I tried to stay calm and shrugged. Not yet, I said. Leo suddenly looked at me. Then he turned toward his mother. Actually, we do, but, he said. The fork in my hand froze midair. Leo noticed. He paused for a moment, then quickly continued. But I forgot, he said. Olivia narrowed her eyes. What did you forget? Leo shrugged. I don't remember, he said. This time, Olivia laughed. That sounded extremely suspicious, she said. I tried to laugh too. Will Leo become a great YouTuber someday? I don't know. But one thing was certain. He would never make a good poker player. Fortunately, Olivia didn't push the subject any further, but as she got up from the table, she turned toward us and said, All right, I am now completely convinced that the two of you are up to something. Then she smiled and walked out of the kitchen. Leo let out a deep breath, so did I. That was close, I said. Leo nodded and gave me a guilty little smile. The following evening, Olivia came home late from the hospital. You could see the exhaustion on her face. She set down her bag, took off her shoes, then came into the kitchen and sat down at the table. I poured another cup from the tea I had made for myself and placed it in front of her. We sat quietly for a while, then Olivia smiled slightly. Something funny happened at the hospital today, she said. What happened? I asked. I was talking to one of the new nurses, she said, and at one point, She asked me how old I was. I laughed. Was it that bad? I asked. Olivia laughed too. No, she said. But then I realized something. She paused for a few seconds. The day I started working there feels like it was only a few years ago. She slowly shook her head. Time goes by so fast. It's unbelievable. For a while, neither of us said anything. Then we heard footsteps coming down the stairs. It was Leo. He had his tablet in his hand. He had come downstairs to use the bathroom. We both watched him for a few seconds. Olivia smiled softly. I wish we could slow down his growing up. Just a little, she said. Leo noticed us watching him and waved. Then he headed back upstairs. I looked at Olivia again. At that moment, I wasn't thinking about the hotel or the reservation or even the anniversary. I was thinking about what Olivia had just said, because I think we had both started realizing the same thing. Time was moving fast, and maybe that was why this anniversary felt a little more important than the others. The next day after school, I was sitting in my car, going over the last few things that still needed to be handled. The hotel reservation was confirmed. The restaurant reservation was ready too. There was only one detail left. Leo. So I called Warren. After a few rings, he picked up. Hello, Michael, he said. Hi, Warren, I replied. I need a favor. I'm listening, he said. Olivia and I are going out of town for a few days, I said. I was hoping Leo could stay with you. Warren didn't hesitate. Of course, he said. Leave him with us. Carol will love it. Carol was Warren's wife, and honestly, you may not have heard much about her in my stories, but that doesn't mean she wasn't a part of our lives. Quite the opposite, actually. Over the past several years, the cookies we ate at Warren's house, the coffee we drank, and many of those long evenings we spent on the porch, all had an invisible hero behind them. Carol. She just wasn't someone who liked talking about herself. Just like Warren. A few days later, we were finally on the road, and honestly, the look on Olivia's face when she discovered the surprise made all the planning worth it. The hotel was small, but beautiful. It sat right on the edge of the lake. When you looked out from the balcony, the water seemed close enough to reach out and touch. The first day, we went for a long walk. The second day, we drank coffee by the lake. And in the evenings, we spent hours talking. And the interesting thing was this. Even though we had lived in the same house for years, it felt as if we had finally found time to talk to each other again. There was no work, no hospital, no school, no meetings. Just the two of us. On the second evening, after returning from dinner, we were sitting on the hotel balcony. The lake was completely still. Olivia spent a few moments looking out at the water. Then she turned toward me. Just out of curiosity, she said, how much did this trip cost us? I smiled. I'm not giving you a number, I said. Olivia laughed. But I do have some good news. She looked at me curiously. This entire trip, I said, is being paid for by our passive income. The hotel, the meals, the gas, all of it. Olivia was quiet for a few seconds. Then she smiled softly. You know something, she said. I'm proud of you. A short but meaningful silence settled between us. I wasn't retired yet. I'd still be back at school on Monday. But the system we had started building years ago was finally giving us a small gift. Over the years, I had read books about passive income. I had studied charts, run calculations, looked at compound growth tables, and during all that time, the financial freedom had always felt like something waiting for me somewhere in the future. A number, a calculation, a destination to be reached one day. But that evening, sitting on that balcony, I realized something. Some things you can learn, some things you can calculate, but some things you only understand once you've experienced them. And no book, no article, and no chart had ever explained what this felt like. because the system we started building years ago had finally given us something real, not an object, an experience, a few wonderful days, and time spent with the person I love. And honestly, what I loved most in that moment wasn't the hotel or the lake view. It was the happiness on Olivia's face. The next day, before heading home, we had one final stop to make, Warren's house. About an hour later, I parked in front of his home. Olivia looked out the window, then smiled. "I don't think someone missed us very much," she said. I looked up at the house. Before we even got out of the car, we could already hear laughter coming from inside. I rang the doorbell. A few seconds later, the door opened, and for the first time in my stories, you were meeting Carol. She wore a warm smile. "It's good to see you," she said. "How was the trip?" Olivia smiled and nodded. "It was wonderful." "I'm glad to hear that," Carol replied. "This little guy has been the joy of the house for the past few days." I laughed. "I hope he didn't wear you out," I said. Carol shook her head. "Quite the opposite," she said. "The house hasn't been this lively in a very long time." When we walked into the living room, Leo was sitting on the floor. A board game lay half-finished in front of him, and across from him sat Warren. Leo looked up when he saw us. "Mom!" "Dad!" he shouted. Then he paused for a second and turned back to the game. "1 second," he said. "I need to finish this turn." I looked at Olivia. Olivia looked at me. I think we were both thinking the same thing. We were no longer entirely convinced that Leo had actually missed us. Warren leaned back calmly in his chair. Then Leo looked up again. "Oh, by the way," he said, "you're losing." Warren raised an eyebrow. "I'm not losing," he said. "You are." "I'm not." "You are." "I'm not." Carol started laughing. Olivia laughed too. I laughed as well. Apparently, Leo had found himself a new gaming partner. Well, as we get closer to the end of season 2, I wanted to thank you. Because honestly, when I first started telling these stories, I had absolutely no idea how many people would listen. But today, you're here, and I'm truly grateful for that. This season has been a long journey. We talked about debt. We talked about investing. We talked about mistakes. We talked about fear. Sometimes we talked about money. And sometimes we talked about things that had very little to do with money at all. Because over time, I realized something. Financial freedom is not just about numbers. It never was. And that's exactly why I wanted to dedicate the final episode of this season to this story. Because sometimes what people need isn't to run faster. Sometimes they simply need to stop and breathe, and then continue the journey. And I think that's one of the things that helps people stay in the game for the long run. Because over the years, I've noticed something interesting. Some people spend their entire lives preparing for the next milestone, the next investment goal, the next promotion, the next raise, the next big number, and they postpone all of their happiness until that day arrives. That's an exhausting way to live. Because when that day finally comes, there's usually another goal waiting on the horizon, then another one, and another. And before they realize it, they've forgotten to actually enjoy the journey itself. Because the purpose of financial freedom is not to postpone life forever. It's to live life a little more freely. So sometimes a small vacation, a nice dinner, or simply a few beautiful days spent with the people you love are part of the journey. They are not a betrayal of the goal. They are the road itself. But we're not completely finished yet, because we still have one more episode. Just like in season 1, you already know I like leaving a little surprise at the end of each season. I'm not going to say too much about the +1 episode for now, but I can tell you this. I tried a few new things. I think it turned out better, and I hope you'll enjoy it too. By the way, What was your favorite episode this season? Which character did you enjoy the most? Olivia, Leo, Warren, Tom, John, or maybe a history teacher who sometimes thinks a little too much? Let me know in the comments. I'm genuinely curious, and I truly enjoy reading your comments. And if you've been enjoying these stories, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with others who might enjoy joining us on this journey. I also wanted to take a moment to thank everyone who has helped this channel grow. I sincerely appreciate every one of you. And finally, I'm not going to say too much about Season 3 just yet, because some surprises are better left as surprises. But I can give you a small hint. If you're a father, or if you're a son, next season might become your favorite season yet. But that's a story for another time. I'll see you in the next episode. Take care.